So in this video, we're going to talk about four things. Firstly, what does HMO stand for? Secondly, what is a HMO? Thirdly, planning use. And fourthly, HMO license. Okay, so let's begin. HMO stands for House of Multiple Occupancy. That's all it means, a house of multiple occupants. That just means a shared house. Okay, so they are sharing things such as the kitchen and the bathrooms and the living rooms, but they have their own bedrooms and keys and they can lock the door and so on. Now, what does a HMO, what is the definition of a HMO? A HMO is where three unrelated people share communal areas such as kitchen, bathroom, living room, and that is it. Three unrelated. If there's two people who are renting a room and they're unrelated, it's not a HMO. If there's one person, two people, not a HMO. As soon as it reaches three people, it's a HMO, and therefore and that's only if they're unrelated. If they're related, such as brothers, sisters, siblings, married, cousins, and so on, then it's not a HMO. Okay, so the definition: three unrelated people sharing communal facilities within a self-contained unit, house, flat, and so on. So a HMO could be a flat, it could be a house. Okay, the third thing we're going to talk about is the planning use. Okay, every single property in the entire UK, maybe the whole world has it, but many countries have it, many countries don't. They have a class, and that class we call in the UK a planning class. So there are lots of them. There's C1, C2, C3, C4. There's A1, A2. There's B1, B2. There's D, and so on. There's not that many. And the government's always changing them. They're adding a few, maybe removing a few, simplifying it. Over time, it changes and it evolves. So C3 is a residential house. C3 is where most people, if we live as a family, like a husband, wife, children, that's a residential house. Even, brothers and sisters are living somewhere. If it's a house where you're living as a family, it is generally C3. So most terraced residential houses are C3. Shops are something different from memory. They're A1 or and so on. And then there's warehouses that are in the Bs and so on. The important thing for us is C3 and C4, these two. So C4 is the shared house. So HMOs should all be C4 planning use. That's important. Whether it's 3 rooms, 4 rooms, 10 rooms, doesn't matter. From 3 rooms onwards, a HMO should be C4 planning use. Okay. Now, that to change a property from a C3 to a C4, there's a small application to do that. It's not expensive. It's approximately £100 last I checked. Every council will have their own website for that, and a section on their council website for this, where you can find out the information, how much it costs, how long it takes, and they generally have a HMO officer, sometimes called an environmental officer, so you can find out that information to change a house into a HMO, even if it's a 4-bed, 5-bed, and so on, or a 3-bed. Now, the important one is the HMO license. This is different to the planning use. HMO licenses are only for 5 bedrooms or more, not 4 bedrooms. 4 bedrooms do not need a license, but 5 bedrooms do at this current time in end of 2021, at the time of this recording. So 5 bedrooms or more, generally nationally throughout the whole UK, that's the case, you need a HMO license. Most properties, when you're doing rent to rent, you will take over a property that already has a HMO license. When you receive the HMO register that you can find from the council's website, simply Google HMO register and then the council's name, and a link will come up, and you can download the Excel file or the PDF file, and so on. So you can download that. Now, the HMO license is a permission from the council to rent the rooms of this property, but it's only for 5 rooms or more. And if a property doesn't have a HMO license and they have 5 rooms, 5 tenants, it's illegal. They're doing it against the law, they're doing it against the council, and so on. They can get fined up to around £20,000. If you take over a property, make sure it's got a HMO license. Ask to see that from the landlord. Ask to see that from the council. They can email it to you as well. So that's that. Now, if a property doesn't have a HMO license, and it's not HMO yet. There is a way to convert a house into a HMO, okay, but we will talk about that in another video. When you first start taking over properties and start rent to rent, you generally will take over licensed properties, and licensed properties will be 5 rooms or more. If you do find a 4-bedroom, it doesn't need a HMO license. It won't be on the HMO register because they only have on that register the license 5 rooms or more. 4 rooms won't be on there. So if you find a 4-bed, then what you should do is ask the landlord to see the planning use. That I need to see the planning use. Is it a C3? Is it a C4? There are some landlords renting out rooms with the planning use of C3 on that property, and that's not correct. They shouldn't be doing that. It should be C4. If they are doing that, you've got to make sure that you do it correctly at least, and that they should put in the application. Once it's accepted, then you can take over. So this is a summary about what HMO stands for, the definition, 3 people or more sharing a house who are not related, sharing communal facilities. Then the planning use, that every property in the UK has a class number. And for this purpose and this business, we only really need to know C3 and C4, because sometimes we convert houses into HMOs, and sometimes you meet landlords who are using a C3 house as a C4, which is not correct. You can ask to see that certificate, and you can ask the council as well. They will confirm it just by email. And the person to speak to is the HMO officer or the environmental officer department. They all have slightly different names. And the last thing was about HMO licenses, which is for 5 rooms or more. They have permission to rent the rooms. If you find a landlord who's doing that without, that's not correct, not allowed, illegal effectively, and therefore they could get fined. You could get fined if you take over and continue. So yeah, make sure it's got a HMO license as well. So hopefully this makes sense, and in the next video we will talk about Article 4.